Okay, we will start. Nimrama, good evening. Welcome to the public program Summer School 2019, August 16, 2019. Tonight, I'm very happy that we have two presentations tonight, each equally important. The first presentation is by Edi Hila and Zef Paci. Okay. It is a special presentation because it relates also to the image that we selected to use as the front image of Summer School at School. The image is a work by Szeeman, and in your text that you can find in the space, you have a short introduction of his bio. Szeeman has been one of the few artists in Albania who have worked in the genre of graphic design and poster during the period of communism. I will not say more. But Edi and Zef have both worked together in an exhibition of Szeeman's works, which were exhibited at the Zeta Gallery in Tirana a few years ago. Since several years, our attempts were to show Szeeman's work, and this year we found, let's say, a model how to show his work and how to have the work present in the space. So we used an image from his poster works as a cover image of Summer School, and then at the same time decided to invite Edi and Zef to tell us more about their work. I will read briefly something from Edi's bio. So Edi Hila was born in Shkodër in Albania, lives and works in Tirana in Albania. As an important figure of the art scenes in this part of the world, the work of Edi Hila has, for the last 20 years, bear witness to the profound changes experienced by societies in post-communist Europe. Having refused to emigrate to a more economically prosperous country, Hila remains living in Tirana when he has developed a practice which reflects on the transitory nature of Albanian history, the geography between East and West, and on the position of Albanian painting in Mediterranean art history. He has taken part in numerous international exhibitions, including the Venice Biennale in 1999, After the Wall at Moderne Museet in Stockholm in 1999 again, Blood and Honey, the Futurist Balkan curated by Harald Szeeman at the Essl Museum in Vienna 2003, and the Liverpool Biennale in 2010. His works have been recently acquired by different collections. The list of collections are also in the text. Zef Paci graduated painting at the High Institute of Arts in Tirana. He holds a doctoral degree from the Center for Albanological Studies in the Institute of Anthropological and Art Studies with research about Manubi photography. From 1999, he's a professor of history of art and painting at the Faculty of Arts of the University of Tirana. More about Zef's bio you find in the material. I will not take much more time. Thank you so much for being here with us. The floor is yours.
Good evening, and thank you for coming. Thank you to the organizers that invited us. And besides the opinions and the general results of communist regime and the application of social realism, it worth take a view of the personages that swore into it and their work. One of them was Franz Szeeman. Who was Franz Szeeman? I'm just saying some notes on his biography, and after that, Edi. His origin, his social strata descends from a well-to-do family with a tradition in the field of pharmacy, chemistry. His mother was the sister of the Russian consul of Shkodër. He was born and grew up in a beautiful big house with a piano in the center of the city. In their whole house they used to speak mostly in French. His education was by Xaverian College of Jesuits, and afterwards was a self-taught artist, amateur, but refined, equipped with a good knowledge and culture, as many artists of avant-garde were. Came from a Christian family, and he began following the traces of the familiar tradition in pharmacy. So he worked for a while in Durrës and in Tirana. After he went and worked as a textile painter in the silk factory of Shkodër, and afterwards was the artistic director of the workshop called Decor of the City. Was the place where artists prepare that what was called the socialist emulation. So about the posters about the main event, propaganda, but also for different activities, so festival, theaters, billboards, so were all this. And he was a designer that in the beginning came from the field of textile, and not directly from graphics. And also he was a member of selective commission of the artistic works for the artistic exhibition organized during the regime. The life with its problem, it was time and again heavy and tragic for him. He has had the loss of the first son, the divorce, and he was loved and respected by a few friends. That was painters Danish Yukniu, Ismail Lulani, Don Musée. Also Edi Hila was very friendly with him familiarly. And I have to admit that also was hated by another group of artists. And all this work was done in a context that was Shkodër. Sometimes he worked for some building some museums, so it was the National Historic Museum of Tirana, Museum of Popular Culture, but folkloristic, not pop. And it was a city with interesting ferments, a very promising past, a city of great expectation, but during the time that Franz Aschico worked, was experiencing an oppressive and fearful situation from the social system that promised equality but was shown really as oppressive and differential. He was one of the components of the cultural humus of a city that were trying to find consolation in the culture, keeping and respecting certain criteria. Why we are talking today about Franz Aschico works? What worth for the figure of a graphic designer that operated during the communist regime? Why we are invited at this summer school in Prishtina from the organizative board of the station? Why worth his example, his model today? The system inside which he operated failed in the Eastern Europe and everywhere, and was replaced by the capitalist one. Which were the incentives that pushed him to create in this period? What was the content of the works he realized as an artist and as a responsible for the artistic quality of the products realized by the institution where he worked for? We must take in consideration that at that time, the possibility to be a dissident was quite small, for not saying impossible. He is an artist that operated inside the official system, and his origin and formation doesn't fit or align with the context he was found. Although he was born and educated inside the family of high strata, he has to work for a plebeian dictator where his bent may be writhed inside the trap of this situation. However, carefully and quietly he undertook the path he wished, that of applied art. And I give the word to Edi Hila to talk about the work of Frans Hachiko and how he knew him.
Faleminderit Zef. Mendoj që ta filloj bisedën për Frans Hachikon duke pas parasysh situatën e artit në Shqipëri në ato vite në kohën e diktaturës, ndoshta para diktaturës, por edhe në kohën e diktaturës. Këto është fjala për një artist I cili ka punuar në fushën e dizajnit. Frans Hachiko ka pas një aktivitet shumë gjerë, jo vetëm në pikturë, sigurisht, por edhe në dizajnin, kuptimin më të gjerë të fjalës. Në Shqipëri, në atë periudhë, piktura ishte një rëndësi kryesore, sepse presupozohesh që piktura është mjeti përmes të cilit diktatura ose ideja e komunizmit transmetohesh më kollaj dhe më direkt njerëzve. Kurse dizajni, në përgjithësi grafika, në përgjithësi dizajni gjerë, kuptimin e arrendamentit apo të instalacionit, nuk I shërben shumë diktaturës dhe nuk I shërben shumë transmetimit të ideve të kohës. Në Shqipëri, mendoj që Frans Hachiko janë dy momente të rëndësishme për kulturën shqiptare që I takojnë dizajnit. Parët, sipas me janë Marupt, dhe I dyti shumë vjet më vonë vjen Frans Hachiko. Ajo që më bën të them ta trajtoj në këtë mënyrë vlerën e secilit prej tyre është fakti se arti I këtyre dy artistëve, I këtyre dy fotografisë edhe në përgjithësi dizajnit prej Frans Hachikut, vjen si rezultat I një kulture, vjen si rezultat I një komunikimi me jashtë Shqipërisë, vjen si rezultat I një formimi përtej asaj që normalisht karakterizonte artistin e zakonshëm apo piktorin e Shqipërisë, po flas gjithmonë, sidomos në periudhën kur është fjala për Frans Hachikun, ne kam fjalën për periudhën e komunizmit. Vepra e Frans Hachikut nuk del përmes aktiviteteve të tij të mëdha, përmes lëvizjeve, po thonë intelektuale, përmes deklaratave, siç mund ndodhi në rastin e një intelektuali aq më tepër kur kemi parasysh disidentët që kanë ndodhur në vendet e tjera. Vlera e veprës Frans Hachikut del nga analizat që mund t'i bëjmë veprës tij, një për një. Aty kupton rafinimin e tij profesional, kupton nivelin me të cilin ai arrin ta përpunoj formën. Për herë të parë shohim që në veprën në dizajnin e tij ose në punën e tij kemi elementet e konceptualit, që ishte një gjë e paimagjinueshme në ato vite në Shqipëri kur mbizotronte realizmi socialist. Dhe fakti është ky që arti pikturës në Shqipëri në atë kohë ishte shumë I vlerësuar dhe të gjithë përfaqësuesit piktorë në atë periudhë vinin nga shkolla dhe akademi e arti të përcaktuara art për art. Dhe kjo e krijonte një disnivel mes grafikës, mes dizajnit dhe pikturës. Piktorë për shembull si Kolidromeno, Abdurrahim Buza, Vanjushmio, Sadik Saceli, të gjithë kishin studiuar në shkolla ku mbizotronte akademizmi. Është fjala për vitet 20-30. Imagjinoni që në këtë periudhë në Itali bie fjala kishte shpërthy futurizmi, ose arti metafizikës, ose poshtë e përpjetna për Evropë, në Francë ishte shpërthy surrealizmi, dhe të gjithë këta artistë shqiptarë që kishin student, po themi, të këtyre akademive, nuk duhet të them që s'kishin iden, po nuk kishin treguar asnjë interes që në formimin e tyre të kishte pjesë nga këto zhvillime të artit bashkohor të asaj kohe në Evropë. Atëherë kthehemi te Franceshiku dhe është një çudi e madhe se si ky njeri, duke jetuar në kushtet e një izolimi total, duke jetuar në një diktaturë shumë të egër, arriti ta zhvendosi veten nga e zakonshmja dhe të dali në dimensione krejtësisht tjera estetike. Një nga momentet estetik që përbën karakteristikën e tij, sidomos në periudhën e fillimit, është kubizmi. Janë shumë elemente, është geometrizmi i vizatimit të tij. Referencat i gjejmë në pjesën më të madhe, i gjejmë te konstruktivizmi rus. Po të shohim aktivitetin e Franceshikut, ai nuk është i kufizuar vetëm në plakatin e fjalës. Por atëherë shohim që të punoj edhe në fushën e eksponateve, ekspozimit, të instalacionit. E shohim që Franceshiku të punoj në tekstil, në industrinë e tekstilit. E shohim që të punon sidomos në dekorin e qytetit. Shohim që ai në pjesën më të madhe të krimtarisë dhe pjesën më të rafinuar ka përmes plakatit, afishes. Dhe kjo ndodh në një kohë kur politika e diktaturës, politika shqiptare në atë kohë, në pjesën më të madhe, po jo vetëm në politikë, po edhe në kulturë, edhe në arsim, edhe kudo, i merrte shemujt nga skemat e organizimit sovjetik, të periudhës sovjetike, dhe është shumë ngjashme sepse ka një moment që koincidon në mënyrë perfekte me zhvillimin e konstruktivizmit, i cili në Rusinë asaj kohe ishte pjesë e politikës bolshevike dhe ajo ishte pjesë e programeve të Partisë Komuniste në Rusi, në Bashkimin Sovjetik. Po dhe duke është e rasti që dhe Franci e shohim që aktivizohet, nuk është vetëm mbetet izoluar vetëm tek afisha. Në çdo festë për shembull që organizohesh për një maj apo për manifestime të ndryshme popullore, ishte dora e tij sepse ishte fjala për dekorimin e qytetit. Dhe kjo ka ndodhur në Rusi dhe në Bashkimin Sovjetik. Do të thonë ata piktorët me iniciativën e Malevicit dhe të tjerë konstruktivistë morën përsipër që ta shpërndajnë, ta nxjerrin artin nga muzeumet dhe ta çojnë në fasadat e ndërtesave në rrugë. Pra kemi të njëjtin si thosh qasje edhe nga një artist shqiptar i cili vepron në këtë mënyrë një kohë kur absolutisht asnjëri tjetër në Shqipëri nuk e kuptonte këtë moment. Unë them që ky është një moment një gjë shumë e rëndësishme për kulturën shqiptare. Më vjen shumë mirë që noll sot një bisedë dhe përgëzoj stacionin i cili mori përsipër që t'i japi hapësirë, t'i krijoj hapësirë në programet e veta një diskutimi për Franceshikun, sepse ky artist që thash dhe pak më sipër, vlera e tij del përmes analizës dhe jo përmes bujës ose zhurmës. Atëherë, si definicion, unë them që në rastin e Franceshikut, ai mund të konsiderohet artisti më bashkohor, i cili krijoi në kushtet e diktaturës shumë kohë përpara se në Shqipëri të instalohesh kapitalizmi, ai trajtoi një art i cilës nuk lëviz asnjë presje nga tendenca dhe nga shija estetike e artit perëndimor. Unë do të do të jetë mirë me konkretizuar këtu është francezi, këtu është një pamje tjetër e Francit në një moshë të thyer ku ai ka qenë dhe i smur edhe i lodhur nga jeta, sepse kështu i erdhi jeta e tij. Dhe po ju tregoj disa plakate, disa afishe shumë interesante që kupton me të vërtet rafinimin e tij estetik. Shikoni se çfarë kompozimi i përkryer në aspektin formal. Me një ekuilibër të përsosur. Kot për kuriozitet, nëse në kompozimin e këtij plakati nofta pjesa ku është një zeta, ku dy një zetat, kjo pjesë nofta mund mos ishte shkruar sepse për hatër të ekuilibrit formal që kanë hapësirat në mes njëra tjetrës, atëherë e kupton këtë moment dhe shikoni me sa delikatesë, sepse politikisht do të ishte një zeta, atëherë me shumë delikatesë e vendos në një nuancë tepër me një intonacion shumë të shuar, gati sa s'duket për me ruajtur të njëjtin ekuilibër formal. Kjo është me rastin e përvjetorit të Zërit të Popullit, që ishte organi i Partisë Punës në Shqipëri, që ishte organi më impreh politik në atë kohë. Ky bën një plakat dhe imagjinoni, ata nuk e kuptonin se çfarë të reje sillte Franceshiku. Për herë të parë i përdor kolazhin, sepse këtu ka prej gazeta, kolazhin në atë kohë në artin e pikturës, po në përgjithësi në Evropë edhe më tutje nuk ishte një gjë e papritur, po për Shqipërinë sigurisht ishte një moment shumë i rëndësishëm, sepse asnjë prej artistëve shqiptar nuk kishte punuar në këtë mënyrë. Përsëri është një plakat tjetër që tregon për vjetorin e çlirimit, për 40 vjetorin e çlirimit të atë dheut. Shikoni se çfarë për mendimin tim është një vepër arti, se si ai e zhvillon jo vetëm si në rastin e dy plakateve në 2 dimensione, por e përdor në 3 dimensione, zhvillon një volum, bën një abstragim të formës në mënyrë volumore dhe geometrike në të njëjtën kohë. Përmes këtij plakati shumë element kubizmit në një mënyrë tepër bindëse dhe as pak formaliste, por përkundazi, që i shërbejnë shumë mirë idesë dhe japin këtij plakati një forcë emocionale. Shikoni se çfarë muzikaliteti ka një plakat si ky. Unë do t'ju tregoj disa plakate pak më vonë, po e vazhdoj rënditjen, sepse nuk do ta prish ritmin e bisedës, po në këtë plakat shikoni se si ai ka një përmas konceptuale tepër të hollë, tre përfine, kupton? Vjen me një shikoni se si e shef idenë e freskisë, jo vetëm tek shpërndarja e ujit, edhe tek bima dhe tek dielli që është lulja e diellit, sepse është fjala për ditën e bujqësisë, është plakati për ditën e bujqësisë, por ka vu këtu në vend i pikave të i-s apo i-se, ka vu ato një fet limoni, që është limoni, është i freskët dhe të provokon shijen e freskisë. Me një fjalë, nofta është momenti i parë kur në artin shqiptar edhe të pikturës ne shohim që prezencën e një qëndrimi konceptual në estetikën e krijuese të asaj kohe. Këtu kemi vërtet një lloj kubizmi, një formë të çon artin e Picassos, të çon artin e kretë modernizmit të viteve 20-30 deri vonë, dhe Kjo përmes një trajtimi original, unë nuk e kam pa as kërkun një po themi, një formë të tillë, një vizatim, pa më në tjetër kohë ne kthehemi mrapa dhe shohim që është prezenca e një relacioni që ka me kulturën edhe me artin e vërtetë. Në këtë as, po themi Picasso ose Braco ose gjithë artistët që I takojnë kubizmit. Gjithashtu, përsëri kemi një lojë shumë ritmike që bëhet përmes formës duke përdorur germat dhe duke kriju një lojë shumë të gëzueshme, sepse edhe në përmbajtjen e këtij plakati këtu është fjalë për një ekspozitë e prodhimit të tisazhit, e prodhimit të tekstileve, dhe pra edhe nga kjo pikpamje përsëri ai nuk largohet, nuk del në formalizëm, kuptimin art për art, në kuptimin e një vepre e cila kërkon të bëjë qefin artistit dhe të bëjë lojën e tij edhe të japi kënaqësi vetes. Përkundazi, ai I nënshtrohet arsyes dhe këtu gjejmë arsye shumë të vërteta, shumë të plota pse ai e trajton në këtë mënyrë veprën e tij të artit. Këtu është fjala për librin shqiptar. Këtu është fjala për një moment që ka të bëjë me letërsinë, po ka të bëjë në përgjithësi me krijimtarinë e vërtet të letërsisë Shqipërisë, që sigurisht në pjesën më të mirë lidhet edhe me folklorin, lidhet edhe me poezinë e poetëve edhe para luftës, I kemi shumë shembuj. Dhe Franci e fut në një dimension përsëri dhe këtu bën një kombinim, po themi, një lloj objekti të ri duke bashkuar një kpucë me një atë thikën që pret fletet e librit, dhe nga mbrapa atij kemi disa libra që ka një ritëm, ka një melodi mbrapa, duke si një vallëzim formash të bardha që I shihni atje në fund. Kuptohet që plakati I tij nuk është më një plakat izoluar nga problematikat dhe fati I madh është që ata që I kanë porosit në atë kohë që mund të kenë qenë punojësit e bashkisë ose punojësit e një inspektor I artit në komitetin e partisë, nuk e di, ja kanë dhënë Francës me I bë këto plakate, se mund të kishte marrë dikush tjetër edhe nuk do kishte dalë një rezultat si ky. Shihni se si ajo kjo është një thirrje, është e prishur pak sepse nuk ka kalu shumë, është majtë diku, është gjetur diku rrule lënë masdore etj, nuk ka rëndësi, po tu është një thirrje për me kursy energjinë elektrike. Dhe ja shikoni këtu këtu është fjala për kursimin e energjisë, edhe ajo fjala kursime është shkruta më aty ku është ai hasahati që llogaritet e konsumin e energjisë. Një moment shumë I rëndësishëm që unë do ta evidentoj është që e gjithë kjo vlerë e francashikut nuk ka se si tjetë që të vijë kështu nga qielli, të vijë jashtë, dhe përndryshe do të ishte jo bindse, përndryshe do të ishte për ne një artific. Po shikoni se sa Franci kishte vërtet një kulturum, se në çfarë mënyre, se si kishte ndërtu kontakte, se si ai kishte gjetë mundësinë për me njoft atë çfarë ndodhte poshtë përpjet, megjithëse konstruktivizmi nuk I takon vetëm, domethënë është njoft përpara se në Shqipëri domethënë periudha luftës para diktaturës, dhe kështu që edhe më përpara e kishte njohuritë e kësaj natyre. Po shikoni këtu kemi dy momente, kemi një thirrje që është e Rodchenkos, një përsëri një artistët rusë të konstruktivizmit, kemi dhe thirrjen që I thot kursejnë energjinë. Shikoni se si e trajton Franci momentin e publicitare, publicistikës në atë kohë. Ky është një plakat të cilin Franci e ka ekspozuar në një ekspozitë ndërkombëtare filmas lufte në vitin 58. i cili është bërë në Berlin dhe kjo ekspozitë është instalu në metrot e Berlinit, fill në ato vitet e mas luftës. E ka qenë një ekspozitë ndërkombëtare shumë e rëndësishme dhe Franci ka pikturu këtë plumin e paqes në këtë mënyrë. Shikoni se si tu është një, sigurisht këtu nuk bëhet fjalë për një, si me themi, për një gjetje origjinale 100% të një në aspektin formal por se kemi një rafinim të proporcioneve përsëri, kemi një shije të hollë, kemi një transmeton një moment dashurie për artin. Në këtu ndjen dashuri për atë që bën. Unë kam gjetë një, fatkesisht më falen nuk e di emrin se kush është ky artist, por përsëri që takon asaj periudhe që flet për paqen. Shikoni se çfarë përcjell në geometrizmin e tij ai artisti sovjetik, po themi, ose rus, më mirë, dhe shikoni se si përcjell, se çfarë përcjell Franci. Unë mendoj se është një krahasim që nuk ka nevojë për fjalë, ti kupton më një herë rafinimin e këtij artisti. Besoj. Në një situatë tjetër kur tema fillon edhe bëhet shumë politike, kur aq më tepër kur ishte fjala për ekspozitat e pikturës në Shqipëri atkohë, ky ka afishën e ekspozitës dhe përsëri dhe këtu e gjen me shumë marifet, duke rujt, si me thënë, atë transmetimin direkt i idesë përmes një ushtari, përmes grushtit, etj. Ai edhe formalisht arrin ta zgjidhë shkrimin e tij. Për shembull, të gjitha këto janë lojnat, din ta përdori atë germën, e përdor bukur germën, nuk i shpëton edhe ky fakt. Dhe shikoni se si në dy cepat e asaj pjesës kuqe, ai me shumë finesë nxjerr cepat e yllit, nxjerr pjesën e asaj kazmës. Bile shikoni se si ai nuk me shumë kujdes nxjerr edhe pak nga flamuri i bardhë në anën tjetër. Pra janë të gjitha që edhe një plakat i cili ka shumë pjesë nga politika, po themi, asaj kohe, ai është shumë i rafinuar dhe bën një qëndrim estetik shumë të bukur. Kjo është një libër, një kopertinë libri, sigurisht nuk ka pak folklorizëm, sepse nofta dhe përmbajtja e mënyrën se si e vizaton është e tillë, dhe ose festivali Gjirokastër, që edhe këtu kemi të bëjmë me një valle, po themi, po ai e abstragon në këtë mënyrë figurën e këtij balerinit, po themi, këtë kostumin popullor, nuk e kopjon kostumin popullor, po ai e pret në këtë mënyrë. Këtu është migjeni, ju e njihni të gjithë loja që i bën me diellin, e kupton se si e vendos dy rozën dhe të kuqen, dhe pastaj atë ideja që shkon përmes diellin mendjen e tij dhe dielli i mall që na ndihmon, nëse pa dash me bë shumë narracione dhe pa dash me shpjegu gjëra që duket, por mendoj se edhe kjo është shumë e rafinuar. Po kështu kemi edhe një kopertinë tjetër që është Plagu i maleve, pas ka qenë një libër. Tani krimtaria e Francit është përqendruar shumë në tekstil dhe veprat e tekstilit, ato motivet të cilat ai trajton në tekstil, absolutisht kanë qenë buronin nga motivet edhe nga dekoracioni që të paktën ne si shkodranëve e dim se vinë nga arkat, nëse e nuseve, janë ato arkat e nuseve që kur martoheshin atë kohë çorin pajën, nuk e di si mund përkthehet. Ose nga kostumet e shkodranëve nofta po kaloj pak më përpara që ta lej pikturën për më vonë. Atëherë, mas gjithë ty ne ju keni parasysh se çfarë pam deri tash. Shikoni se çfarë paralel me francëshikun, shikoni se çfarë arti bësh në Shqipëri. Një art i dhunshëm, një art që do të me tërgu forcën dhe s'kishte as pak forcë. Mënej ku grushti është elementi kryesor, sepse presupozohet që grushti është përgjigje që mund të jepet armikut, që tregon atë qëndrueshmërinë politike të partisë etj. Momenti tjetër në plakatin e asaj kohe ka qenë kolektivja, domethënë bërja prezente që janë populli, është populli ai që lufton, që punon, që gëzimi i tij etj. Kjo është si sa interesant është në llojin e vet që është edhe vulgare, por në tikohet duket edhe pak shumë e çuditshme se si atë 20-ën e bën si një kështjellë, e kupton, është e mania e kështjellave. Në përgjithësi në Shqipëri është shumë e përhapur mania e kështjellave, bile edhe në arkitekturë. Ne shohim që shumë shtëpia dhe shumë dekorime përdorin atë bedenat e kështjellave. Kujtojnë se ty bë kështjellë dhe je shqiptar, je ruan traditën e teorisë së natyrës. Ja, për shembull, maksimumi i një plakati, po themi që është një mozaik në qendër të Tiranës që tregon në mënyrë skepatike optimizmin revolucionar. Unë kam vu montu bashk plakatin që ja pat më përpara dhe posterin e dytë që është ky i cili kanë të njëjtën paka shumë temë, është fjala për një përvjetor, por autor tjetër. Ky është një autor tjetër. Artist. Po, dhe këtu kuptohet se çfarë avancimi ka francashiku, ashtu siç e shpjegova pak më përpara, dhe shikoni se sa naiv është 30 vjet, mezi lexohet, pa forcë. Shikoni ajo është Shqiponja, është më tepër një karikaturë e Shqiponjës se sa një element që simbolizon Shqipërinë etj. Shikoni, po të krahasojmë këto dy, shikoni sa i rafinuar është plakati i Francës dhe shikoni se sa naive dhe se sikur të ishte një vizatim fëmijësh, ose në këtë rast për shembull, tu është fjala për simbolin, për elementin që është drapi dhe çekani, shikoni se si abstragon francashiku, shikoni se si e vizaton një artist në Shqipëri atë kohë unë desha i tregova këtë lloj montazhi, e bëra këtë lloj montazhi për të thënë që cila ishte atmosfera rreth tij, se sa vështirë ka pasaj që t'imponohesh me artin e tij. Tani, po shumë interesant kjo, ju mund ta lexoni edhe vetë, po e lexoj edhe me ju, është një sekretari i lidhjes artistëve në atë kohë, nuk ka rëndësi emrin në atë kohë, Kujtim Buza, ai do të bënte një raport në komitet qendror për nivelin e artit shqiptar dhe për tendencat edhe për dhe në atë dhe ai shkruan ka një paragraf atje, e thot, në qoftë se në artet figurative, në pikturë dhe skulpturën e kabaletit dhe monumentale, kontrolli shtetëror ishte i madh, në drejtimin e gjinive të tjera, të ilustrimit të librave, kopertinave, në përgjithësitë grafikës, plakatit, skenografisë, dekorit qyteteve, piktor dhe dekorator të prodhimeve artistike. Në këta kontrolli shtetëror dhe i kualifikuar ka çaluar shumë. Nuk ishte i fortë, domethënë, ishte i dobët. Dhe për më tej, domethënë, bile në këto gjeni është spekulluar, i bjeme, pa fre, përmes shumë imitimesh, të cilat këta artisti kanë mbrojt me pretekstin e specifikës së gjinisë. Domethënë, në Shqipëri në atë kohë ishte pjesa më e pa kontrolluar politikisht, sidomos kur u hap televizioni shqiptar, dhe doli u bë prezent skenografia televizive, u kriju shumë hapësirë për t'u shmang pak a shumë kërkesave estetike të realizmit socialist. Dhe ky punoi si politik i lidhjes artistave, e kishte kuptuar edhe i dërgonte Komitetit Qendror një relacion si ky që ja çapo ndodh në Shqipëri. Kuptohet që kjo ka të bëjë shumë dhe ka lidhje shumë me punën e Franceshikut, i cili vërtet gjeti hapësira, gjeti mënyra për me zhvillu atë që pam deri tani. Përsëri kemi për geometrizmin, për me tregu se sa unë nuk po e zgjas më të se kalon edhe ora. Dhe këtu është një fotografi e lumtur e familjes si kur ishin fëmijët e vegjël, sepse edhe në diktaturë, edhe kur ka edhe kur je me probleme qoftë edhe mbi jetese, njeriu jeton, martohet, dashurohet, lind fëmijë, shkon mu la në det, e kupton, pra jeta është gjithsesi është e bukur, është dhe këtë e ka çdo njeri përhise. Më ne se çanol më vonë se si vinë punët edhe se çfarë, cili është fati i njerit apo i tjetrit, kjo është një problem që sa kërkush nuk e ka në dorë. Keni ndaj pyetje në shumë kjo se duhet?
Okay, so I have to say an extraordinary opportunity for us to see it more. I'm opening the floor for questions if anyone wants to comment or have a question at this time. So, if not, I will make Në seksioni të njëjtë dhe Zefit, ndikimi I tij në zhvillimin e proceseve në atë pandor, është flas për ndikimet edhe në punën e juaj.
Po, si kjo. Atin unë po e tërgoj një shembull shumë vogël, që përpjeket, ashtu si që tregova shembullin e asaj e kolazhit, një nga tiparet e konstruktivizmit ishte përdorimi I materialeve ndërtimore. Dhe ne shohim që në një ekspozit që u dhoma tregtisë në Tiranë, ku do të ekspozoheshin prodhimet bujqësore, industriale, tjera, Franci kishte dekorin, do të bënte dekorin, dhe ai kishte vizatu me hekur, në një formë shumë të thjeshtësuar, një burrë dhe një gru, që kishte edhe një shkrim sipër, dhe për me dhënë idenë e një situate, ku diun, fushë apo prodhimi industriale tjera. Në këtë kohë vjen kryeministri në atë kohë ishte për Museu, edhe vërtet me të madhe, dhe thotë që kush e ka bërë këtë, I thonë që ka bërë Franceshiku, dhe ai e terrorizon Franceshikun, I flet shumë ramë, edhe ai prishe që të po me arrestojnë, thotë se momenti ishte shumë delikat. Sigurisht që kjo ekspozit pati një influencë shumë të madhe, sepse edhe ekspozitet tjera, pavarësisht nga kjo ndodhi me kryeministrin në asaj kohe, ajo la gjurmën e vet, sepse në atë kohë kishte nevojë me u pasuru në aspektin formal të njëjtin gjë dhe të njëjtin problem në lidhje me trajtimin formal të një vepre arti ka pas edhe piktura. Arti i pikturës ishte shumë mrapa nga kjo pikpamje. Po të krahasojmë vizatimin me hekur të Francashikut, i bie që ai ishte, nuk e di edhe sot e kësaj dite, ishte bashkohor. Nuk kupton? Kjo është për mua është një çudi e madhe si ka mundësi si ka ndodhur në atë kohë. Sigurisht që influenca e Francit nuk ishte vetëm përmes artit, po ai kishte marrë një shkollë, që ishte shkolla e jezuitëve në atë kohë, në gjimnaziu jezuit, që kishte për masa gati si universitet. Se Shqipëria në atë kohë para lufte, kaq ishte e vogël, por pedagogët dhe profesorët dhe programi i shkollës jezuitëve në Shkodër ishte jashtëzakonisht i avancuar. Ata mësonin filozofi, mësonin logjik, mësonin estetik, dhe Franci ishte një nga studentët dhe sigurisht ky ishte bagazhi i tij. Domethënë ishte rafinimi i tij intelektual, i që e lejonte atë për me dalë në konkluzione, në përfundime, plus pastaj talentit, plus pastaj intuitës të jashtëzakonshme, plus ndjesive si njeri, ishte i ndjeshëm, se kjo punë kërkon ndjeshmëri, e kupton? Jo çdo kush mund të bëj art, ai që s'ka ndjeshmëri, e kupton? Atëherë këto elementi kishte Franci absolutisht dhe mendoj që ishte figura më komplekse. Dhe rezultati ishte kjo që pam. Këto imagjinoni që janë bërë në një kohë kur ishte diktatura në kam, që ishte shumë e Unë them që influenca e Francit, sepse në Shkodër fatmirësisht kanë qenë një grup artistësh që ishte Dani Shukniu, një artist shumë i zotit dhe i studium në Krakow, dhe që kishte një formim shumë të kompleks edhe të plotësuar si artist. Ishte Angelin do të mësoj një romantik dhe një njeri me shumë pasion. Ishte Franci, që po flasim sot. Ishte më vonë erdhi Ismail Ulani, ishte më njeri shumë e radhë. Dhe ati ishte kriju një nukull, një grupim i 3-4 njerëzve, dhe do të kuptu se sa rëndësi ka, e kupton, kur 3-4 njerëz përsmari të mençur, e kupton, janë bashkë dhe rrinë bashkë një tjetrin. Dhe shumë të ri nga liceu i Shkodrës, po edhe nga akademijarë që ishin nga Shkodra, kanë ndaj afër këtij grupi dhe ato kanë transmetuar mënyra se si ndërhynte, ka qenë shumë interesant mënyra se ndërhynte Danishi për me korrigju një vepër në pikturë. Franci ishte kategorik, Franci nuk bënte kompromis, ishte ndershëm. Nuk thote Franci, hajde se po i bëjmë qefin këtë artistit dhe mirë ke shumë djalë i Zotit. Jo, thote kjo nuk ban për. Kishte hera parë që përplasëshim me një qëllim kategorik në Shqipëri, domethënë gjithmonë ishte servilizmi, ishte kompromisi, me i baqefin këti, jo, Franci ishte. Dhe sigurisht kjo e bani armik me shumë njerëz. Mos harrojmë se shumë njerëz nuk e kanë dashur, e kanë. Po, kjo është karakteri artistit, është forca intelektuale. Unë mendoj që Franci nuk i njehet vepër, por i njehet ky kualitet. Kjo është vepra ti, kjo është kualiteti i tij. Është dhe misioni i tij si intelektual është kryer pikërisht në këtë mënyrë, në këtë formë.
Shumë që do të falje. Që të hapë mikrofonin. Vishtë është nëse një këtë të njerë.
Përshirë si të më shumë që atë shumë i mirë dhe shumë e kënes ka punu. Prekoj të ndëri mu i influencu.
Po.
Në atë po.
Po.
Në më thonë ka pra shansë me po atë shka.
Unë besoj që kjo është mister edhe për mu, por adin si është puna, unë besoj shumë të kjo që kush është që janë me erë, si me thonë gjanë e mirë, në të dhja, mjafton me pa një riprodhim, edhe ti tak për i herë e ka. E thonë, thash pak për para për ndjeshmërinë, është e çuditshme, kështu funksionon dhe në art, e kupton? Është një artist i madh që ka ikë nga Rusia, Boltanski që quhet. Boltanski ka thënë një shprehje fantastike, thotë që Akademitë e Artit thotë i prishin artistët e ri. Kështu ka thënë. Akademitë e Artit e prishin artistën e ri, sepse akademitë imponojnë ndërhymin e profesorit, ndërhymin e kujtjon se çfarë. Në këtë rast Franci është autodidakt, nuk ka studiu. Franci ka ndaj me danishin, kanë bisedu shumë për Polonin, për profesorët e Krakovit, ka hinë një revist në Qeftas, kanë shku në bibliotekë kombëtare, kanë njoftë atë bibliotekarin me drejtorin, kanë marrë një revistë dhe kanë pa, a kuptojnë edhe mënë, kjo ka qenë mirë po, nuk e di se sa mund ta kuptojnë rinia sot se çfarë angazhimit edhe në aspektin psikologjik ka kënë për me absorbu çdo gjë, për me e thith, e kupton, mos me lanë me tik për durësh. Edhe kjo ishte pjesë e gëzimit të jetës për këto artist. Unë kështu e shpjegoj problemin e Francit.
Shumë unik. Shumë unik.
Anyone else, any question, reflection? If not, Edi will be with us tonight, so use the opportunity to communicate with him. Misschien u fazenderu, depois de você, que me chega de maneira, as pessoas que estão
Faleminderit dhe ju shumë,
We will make a short 15-minute break and we continue with the presentation by Elzbieta Matynia. Thank you. I think we can start. We have a critical mass in the room. Okay, so I'm very happy to present the second presentation for the evening. Elzbieta Matynia's title of the presentation is The Killing of Dialogue is the Liberal Democracy History. As I explained before, Elzbieta also is doing a 3-day course for the summer school at School 2019. It's our first collaboration. I'll just read briefly something from our bio, not to take a lot of time. It says here, Polish-born, Elzbieta Matynia is a professor of sociology and liberal studies and director of the Trans-Regional Center for Democratic Studies at the New School for Social Research in New York. Her research in the sociology of arts and politics focuses on democratic transformation and more recently retreats from democracy in Eastern Europe and beyond, on the concept of borderlands in the new shared Europe and more recently on the challenges faced by democracies emerging with the legacies of violence. Her 2 recent books bring together theater of politics, performance art, and citizens' agency. I will not read more. You have this information provided in this space. Just once again to thank you for being here with us. The floor is yours.
I'm only asking for your patience because it's a very long day for me, and not just for me, but for some other people. We had a very lengthy seminar today, and then I had some job to do over internet and phone, and I'm trying to be. I will try to be coherent. For that reason, I'm going to make sure that I can actually read what I'm saying. So let me just start with an anecdote. It is actually, as much as this is a historical, there are trips made to history. This is actually very much both about today and quite a personal talk. So bear with me. If in 1987 God had asked the Poles what their 3 most fervent wishes were. This is an anecdote that I heard from Adam Michnik, who is a good friend, and he actually gave this anecdote at the new school recently at the lecture that I invited him. So if in 1987 God had asked the Poles what their 3 most fervent wishes were, they would have replied, first, we want to live in a country with no political prisoners. Second, we want a country without censorship and foreign armies. And third, we would like the Soviet Union to fall apart. And the good Lord listened to Poland, and all three wishes came true. We got our freedom, and today God is asking the Poles, what have you done with your freedom? So it was exactly 30 years ago, 3 decades ago, 1989, 2019, 30 years ago, that a new kind of revolutionary imaginary emerged, an imaginary that promised a new beginning and demonstrated the possibility of comprehensive, systemic change without bloodshed. Velvet revolution, velvet or otherwise unradical, because without bloodshed. This kind of revolution has become a site of tangible hope, a site in which words have power, in which people are allowed to speak and are listened to, and where they realize their agency through instruments other than weapons. Negotiated revolution. It's not an oxymoron. It sounds like oxymoron. It's not an oxymoron. But it's still an extraordinary event when it happens as dictatorships, because dictatorships really are by definition opposed to any spirit of negotiation, dialogue, or compromise. The story I'm about to tell you is in many ways my own story, my formative experience as a scholar, a citizen, as a human being, and also a woman. No matter how abstract it may sound, this is a deeply personal story of both hope and despair. It was in 1989, 9 years after the Solidarity Revolution of 1980-81, something that really shaped me. I mean, if I would go around the room and ask you a question, what was your formative experience? It's very difficult to answer, but I've heard about it. I don't know whether you would immediately answer, but I had enough. I have asked myself, I know what mine was. Mine was the solidarity, this amazing 16 months of solidarity in Poland. So it was in 1989, 9 years after Solidarity Revolution of 80-81, and under enormous pressure exerted by the entire society, which had included a new wave of nationwide industrial strike the previous year. So it was in 1989 that the communist regime agreed to talk again with its subjects at the round table in Warsaw. Hannah Arendt, she taught at the New School and she is my guiding light, so I'm going to talk about her often. Hannah Arendt would have called that a privileged moment, that moment of those talks, when, as a result of people acting together in concert, she would say, rational persuasion prevailed instead of violence. She called it a privileged moment. I called it performative democracy. I'm someone who subscribed to a dramaturgical concept of society, a society that is not predetermined by historical necessity, but has a range of actors, a polyphony of voices, the inevitable tensions and conflict that arise from it, and above all, a capacity to conduct a dialogue in public, through which consensus can be reached concerning the social order, even if it's an agonistic consensus full of tension. I have been fascinated by a dimension of political life that occurred in latter part of 20th century in both non-democratic and democratic context. I think of this dimension, something I experienced myself, as closely related to politics of hope, and I do call it performative. Just to be clear, performative democracy is neither a theoretical model, a political ideal, nor a tested system of governance, but, as I have argued elsewhere, a locally conditioned process of either the enacting or the enhancing of democracy by its citizens. Enacting. Indeed, theater was a crucial concept, and practice guiding my reflection, as the core of 1989 revolution was a prior germination of, at the core of this revolution was a prior germination of public space within engaged public theatre, and then its gradual cultivation and expansion. One instance of such an interdependence between freedom and the public realm was provided by a laboratory I was a part of, laboratory I call Active Freedom. It was operational for 16 months. That laboratory worked for 16 months, from August 15, 1980 till December 13, 1981, when the Polish communist regime declared the state of war or martial law against its own people. But it was during this precious 16 months of so-called solidarity period that a robust connection between active freedom and the dimension of democracy I called performative became evident. Encouraged by a growing dissent in late 1970s and enabled by small cracks in the authoritarian system, the surfacing of this dimension of democracy facilitated the gradual transformation of an unfree environment into a democratic one. At the end, it was instigated by the strike in Gdańsk shipyards in August 1980, which in solidarity with the striking shipyard workers spread all around the country and brought into a standstill almost all industrial enterprises in the country. Workers in the shipyard went on strike, other people joined them. How could they join them when the government cut the possible communication with the city on the Baltic Sea? Well, it wasn't so easy because it was vacation. People were going back from vacation from Gdańsk, from Baltic Sea on the cars, and they brought the news. And then the south of Poland went on strike. And in order to let other people know, there were trains coming up, coming from the mines in the south with the coal. Very unhealthy, we know that. With the coal going to the shipyard, to the port to be sent, and on those trains, every train had one word, and it said, "The Silesia and the miners are in solidarity with striking workers in Gdańsk." I'm talking about it because there was no internet. You could not do anything else. The phones didn't work. The trains went through from south to northern Poland across the country. So what happened? The government had to come to the striking workers and to the shipyard. And as a result of a very dramatic and very lengthy negotiations with the workers, at that point already all over the country, an unusual trade union that represented one union which represented everybody, all professions, teachers and bakers and policemen, and everybody was in this one trade union. So the unusual trade union that represented all professions and trades and independent of communist authorities was allowed to be established. It was called Solidarity, and it quickly began to function as a massive social movement that mastered all the skills of self-governance within and autonomy within one party state. Now, when I said formative experience, this is my formative experience. This is how far I go. So at the core of performative democracy, as I said before, it's constitution of a free, even if initially embryonic, small, tiny public space. And then expansion, gradual small steps expansion. This is where one, and why do we need that? Because this is where one can listen to others speak, and when one can enter into discussion and deliberation. And such a space was not very easy to get in that regime. So the gatherings were furnished within the newly established Solidarity trade union offices, but also in the halls of the factories, at the universities, churches, all sorts of enterprises. That's where people met. In the early months of Solidarity, those were the first public squares in which people could come together and talk. It was there that anonymous, impersonal, and very institutional way of speaking, known from the state media, was replaced by concrete, individual, distinctive, imaginative voices. Empowered by the sense of being free to organize themselves, people established the principles and practices of democratic governance within the Union, and then they enacted them. So the emergence of Polish solidarity in 1980, that peculiar nationwide union of trade unions, whose legal existence was negotiated between the Gdańsk shipyard workers and the communist government in Poland, was, in my opinion, a masterpiece of performative democracy. And I explain what I mean. This was when people discovered both the taste for democracy and their own performative capacities. That was when anonymous, dreary, and institutional way of speaking, official language, was replaced by concrete voice, using a kind of I, using autonomously speaking I. People spoke in their own name, and the citizen actors of the solidarity movement forced the state to engage in a dialogue with them. Such voices or speech acts are a key component of performative democracy, and bear in mind that true dialogue does not incite hate, speech, or violence. So when at the end of the strike, this leader of the strike, electrician with mustache, that soon later the whole world began to know him, who had led the strike in the shipyard, emerged from a very grueling negotiations with the government. He got on the top of the van, and I was talking about it today at the seminar, and addressed thousands of people gathered in front of the shipyard gate. He proclaimed, "We will have our independent, self-governing trade union solidarity. Our newsletter, which we published here during the strike, will become the union paper. And we will be able to write without censorship whatever we want. We have the rights to strike." That speech, distributed throughout the country via unofficial channels, became the most emblematic moment of performative democracy, in my opinion, in the 20th century. 9 years later, we are coming to today, don't worry, history is going to be soon over. 9 years later, in 1989, at the roundtable talks with the communist government, again, those skills developed during the 16 months, the speech-based performative capacities employed by the still delegalized Solidarity Union, moved towards non-violent change. The talks were both a political installation and performance, with spirit of improvisation, brilliant moments. Workers and former prisoners, people who often recently came from prison, talk to the stodgy government, communist government officials. Yet the whole thing turned into be not only dramatic, but actually performative. It worked. The words worked. The outcome of this political masterpiece, which I also call negotiated revolution, the change was negotiated. Dramatic, systemic change was negotiated. The fight was through words. The outcome of this political masterpiece reactivated the public square and enabled a swift move towards a radical break with the political system. Communism was over. It was April 1989. The promise of the first election were signed, and first election took place on the 4th of June that year. Mind you, the Berlin Wall collapsed several months later. So the new beginning was launched, and an unorthodox path to revolutionary change through negotiations was founded. What an instance, one would say, of active freedom. Although the way in which the momentous transformation in East and Central Europe were triggered, and then they were worked out, varied from country to country, to the rest of the world, communism appeared to have collapsed miraculously on its own. Once the Berlin Wall came down and the metaphorical Iron Curtain was lifted, and the radical break with the past was accomplished, it had happened miraculously on its own. What a victorious triumph of liberal democracy, what a perfect backdrop to the end of the history. Fukuyama came up and said, this is the end of the history, right? This is it. We are not going to deal with it now. Liberal democracy takes over. Well, to start with, by now we know that the Berlin Wall did not just collapse on its own. Rather, it was a gradual building of a new imaginary that had put into motion what one of the architects already mentioned, Adam Michnik, dissident thinker, called a self-limiting revolution. It envisioned a new beginning and a peaceful yet fundamental systemic change that would replace authoritarian rule with democracy and without bloodshed. Though there were plenty of skeptics, the strategy proposed in his essay, iconic essay in 1976, called New Evolutionism, which was quickly noted by European and American left, and inspired various changes in Western left. So his essay, the proposed strategy was not a fantasy, because it turned out to be quite workable. At the foundation of this negotiated revolution was this crucial social imaginary. This is a pre-theoretical structure of meaning that conveyed an aspirational belief of the era, that it is a cold that is the Cold War era, and worked as a kind of mental scaffolding. It was subversive, but it was worked by the people, and it gave the sense of, it was coherent, and it made sense, and it was based on reason. So this future-oriented social imaginary was democracy. And that imaginary, with its power to illuminate a desolate social reality, became vital for people not only in this part of the world, people everywhere really associated it with various freedoms that they did not have, but also with economic affluence and with vivid colors and happy lives available to those who lived in the so-called West. Democracy, as captured by this imaginary, was simply a dignified and therefore happy place. I want to mention something which is hardly appreciated, but which made performative democracy possible, and all those changes possible. And I'm talking here about the signing of the Helsinki Agreement in 1975. Made the final act of the Conference on Security and Cooperation in Europe made a real difference, as the signatories, people who came to sign, were invited to take part in this conference, were heads of the governments of all Eastern Bloc. From behind the Iron Curtain, nobody then suspected that the widely publicized signing of the Special Charter on Human Rights would encourage new forms of citizen engagement outside the exclusive purview of the communist state. It was imperceptible then, but it's clear today how much the inclusion of human rights instruments, followed by the emergence of Helsinki watch committees in various places throughout Europe, watching the agreements, watching whether they are realized, whether they are fulfilled and implemented. So how much, watching whether there is a compliance with the accords, how much they would help to open up throughout the region a tiny public sphere without which citizenship could be exercised. If you remember, Charter 77 was established in Czechoslovakia in 1977 because the citizens and 100 people only signed it initially, with Václav Havel and Šimečka as the first names. Charter 77 was established because it was 2 years after the signing of the Helsinki Agreement, and Czechs and Slovaks, Czechoslovaks as we called them then, could not still travel to the West. And that was just a reminder that, hello, you signed something. So this is why it is clear today, I think, that how this groundwork, which was done in 70s and early 80s, already existing groundwork, brought about the possibility for this democratic imaginary to acquire its dimension, which is a liberal rights dimension, human rights dimension. So in this realm of audaciously claimed liberal rights became gradually infused with a very strong social justice component. After all, Poland's self-limiting revolution was instigated by the workers in the shipyard, who had organized the society through the union. And indeed, solidarity, specifically social solidarity, with a small s, not the name of the union, was this newly discovered and cherished treasure that supplied liberal democracy with much needed warmth. Liberal democracy, and we can have long discussions about it, and philosophy, the classical liberalism, leaves individual alone, and it builds the walls between the private and the public, and liberalism is a cold philosophy. Solidarity brought the warmth to it. The idea that we are all here together and we should help each other. Arendt, with her knack for sharp distinctions, it's helpful in illuminating in her book on revolution, where she writes that pity is a sentiment, while solidarity is based on reason. It's only out of solidarity that communities of interest can be deliberately and dispassionately established, so they could speak and act out politically. And it was that solidarity imbued liberal democratic imaginary that became both locally potent and globally contagious. And though it assumed an array of forms and idioms, it surfaced under very varied conditions of authoritarian rule. It shared one important global dimension. It reflected some basic belief that there were indeed places, normal countries, where human rights were observed along with social rights, where government is of and for the people, and where democracy is actually practiced. And one should not dismiss here the extraordinary power carried on by the image of a normal country. If you imagine, if you are living somewhere else, and this is how you imagine democracy as a normal place, you want to be normal place, we should not dismiss that. And whether it's envisioned in Prishtina, Johannesburg, Manila, Krakow, Cairo, I don't know, Kiev. Indeed, citizens themselves peacefully challenged and changed their oppressive regimes, disassembled the immensely concentrated power structures, and launched processes of democratization. We mustn't forget, however, that on that very same day, June 4th, 1989, the day that marked the beginning of democracy in Poland, when Poles went to vote for the solidarity candidates in the Soviet bloc's first free elections, negotiated the round table, something else had happened in the world, and that was the massacre in Tiananmen Square. That's the same day, the 4th of June. And if you, after that talk, and I will try to do it fast from now on, you go, there are some pictures and images here from that, which I looked at before the evening. And it marked, that Tiananmen Square marked a different transition. The beginning of a bizarre system that blended repressive communism with party-owned capitalism. The struggle in Hong Kong, we are following daily, are the most recent expression of the surveillance state, which forbids freedom. So thus it is indeed in this part of the world, and not so far from here, where we are today, and that those spaces behind the Iron Curtain, if you look at it today, the Iron Curtain had been lifted. The various other little curtains appeared, velvet or whatever. They are still we are still divided. They are still divided, or we are still not allowed to join that normal country, imaginary of the normal country. It was not far from here that 4 decades ago, people began to to leave behind their fear. And it was it was in that part of the world, in this part of Europe, that civil society, a long neglected idea, was reactivated and began its global renaissance. Now, civil society, human rights, those are all elements of the liberal democracy, just to remind you. It became clear, as we discussed it today in the seminar, that private actors, even under intolerable conditions, can act on behalf of public good. Indeed, major recrafting of socio-political landscape took place. New institutions and processes were established, major decentralization of power through the creation of local and provincial self-governments took place, numerous political parties emerged and disappeared, elections were conducted, multiple elections, reprivatization was launched, and a new constitution was drafted in every country. As tough as it was for many throughout the 1990s, the economy gradually improved, and the idea of freedom became something much more tangible. Freedom is rarely tangible. I shall add that, and that served as a warning already then, that I well remember my arrival to Prishtina in late July 1999, almost 20 years ago, when driving on my way, or being driven actually on my way from Skopje, I saw on my left refugees from Kosovo, and closer to Prishtina, houses that were still burning. But Poland was lucky. Poland was very, very lucky. When one visits the country today, one visits a vibrant and prosperous place. Not that this is not vibrant and prosperous, and I was very, very impressed yesterday when we went to Soma to see how amazing this is. The economy has been booming for a long time. I'm talking about Poland, though. And the Warsaw Stock Exchange, located on the prime real estate site, oh, the irony, this prime real estate site is the former headquarters of the Communist Party. Now this is a stock exchange. It's doing very well. The borders in Europe are no more, and an average Pole, as an average Pole, one doesn't have to feel like a poor cousin when visiting Berlin or Paris. Yet, recently, many have found themselves perplexed by the anti-democratic backlash there in the region. But not only in the region. And that's what I wanted to talk in this part of my presentation. What happened to the democratic imaginary that used to have such a power to mobilize people, inspire people all over the world? How is it that democracy has made such a U-turn, and that so many are now struck dumb watching its massive reversal? And how come de-democratization under various guises is taking place virtually all over the globe? What went wrong? Well, it was 2 years ago in late February 2017 that Washington Post that the Washington Post that appeared on the newsstands displayed a new motto. Newspapers have the motto. Daily newspapers have the motto. I don't know what's the motto of your major newspaper in this country, but Washington Post did not have a motto, and it came and the new motto that appeared was disturbingly unfamiliar. That was something that people were not accustomed to. It said, "Democracy dies in darkness." That's a new motto of Washington Post. If you open Washington Post, that's what it will say just in front of that. So it was discussed. It was not that it appeared out of nowhere in 2017. It has been discussed by the editorial board for more than a year before our last presidential elections in 2016. The phrase became the motto of the Post only 1 month after Donald Trump moved to the White House, and was greeted with some controversy. Unlike the familiar and high-spirited motto introduced by the New York Times 116 years ago, I don't know whether you remember, but it says all the news that fit to print. They do everything that fits the print. This one was, the one from Washington Post, "Democracy dies in darkness," was initially considered too negative. But was it? Actually.
To what again?
Too negative. Too negative. The post-executive editor, Martin Baron, might have been showing some foresight when he declared then, certain institutions have a very important role in making sure that there is light. Democracy dies in darkness. Now, he was obviously talking about the press, whereas I shall be talking here about theater, broadly defined social theater. And I would like to put a more positive ring to it and to think in terms of not dying, democracy not dying, but having a chance to be reborn, renewed, or recreated. That's not easy, because things actually are going down the hill as we watch. It is, of course, not particularly comforting that John Adams, one of America's founding fathers, second president of the United States, and a brilliant thinker, in 1814, polemical letter to a congressman, John Tyler, had already articulated a very dark vision. Mind you, this is the guy who established, who came, they all came with those dreams, right? There was after American Revolution, they won, they were independent from England. It's just amazing thing. And he was the second, and everybody actually, it was incredibly respected. He said in that letter, remember, democracy never lasts long. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself. There never was a democracy yet that did not commit suicide. Now, I have shivers. I don't know about you. I don't like to hear that because I'm by nature, I think, much more optimistic person. So I like to pause for a moment with a reference to a classical tragedy. I don't know whether you remember, perhaps you remember, in the first act of Hamlet, you will have to read Hamlet in the original in order to know this phrase, when the prince, trying to tell his friend Horatio just arrived because Hamlet's father had died, so he came for the funeral. So when the Prince Hamlet is trying to tell his friend Horatio that strange thing, uncanny things are happening at the royal court of Denmark, he whispers, "The time is out of joint." I borrowed that idea. That's not my idea. I worked with Agnes Heller. Agnes Heller was a brilliant philosopher who died a month ago. And when she was getting ready when I invited her to teach in the summer school that I ran in Wrocław, Poland, I asked her to do something about the tragedy. And she came out with the title. I wrote the course description, so I feel that I can use it, and she said they can use it. Time is out of joint. And this was the title, of course, as I said, that I encouraged her to teach that seminar last year, summer seminar. The times seem to be out of joint. The times we live in seem to be out of joint, indeed. But since I am above all a sociologist, I like to flesh out that phrase at this point very briefly with some assorted insights. The findings of the recent 2018 Freedom House report. Freedom House is a very respected source. You may not agree with them, but when it comes to the reports, they're very, very disciplined. And this report is truly frightening. For a second year in a row, we read there are more consolidated authoritarian regimes than consolidated democracies. And here I'm quoting, "Contempt for independent institutions and open discussion has become entrenched from Central Europe to Eurasia." Indeed, governments' takeover of the judicial systems, appropriation of public media to serve the ideological needs of the ruling party, smear campaigns against non-governmental organizations. And you know that too. I mean, you read the press. Violations of ordinary parliamentary procedures have brought about a dramatic deterioration of democracy everywhere, in the region, but not only in the region. Still, how is it that over the last few years, I still have to ask this question, Our precious and widely shared democratic imaginary had been undermined, and now it's being dismantled. Why is this society, and I'm thinking about Polish society right now, that was so united in dethroning the long rule of communism, now is so fiercely divided? Why is the diversity of people, opinions, cultures, and beliefs so shunned? Where has generosity gone? Why is the vital liberal norm of mutual toleration and forbearance vis-à-vis political opponents vanishing? Why is it so difficult to dismiss the belief in a conspiracy against the nation? Why are the liberal media and former dissidents who languished in prison for their pro-democratic stance treated with such a vitriol today? I actually had in mind, because it began some time ago, about the way Havel was treated. Or Michnik, for example. Why is violence entering the square of politics? The situation is particularly alarming as today fierce political divisiveness begins to look like a caricature of the Schmittian concept of the political as necessarily based on the sharp distinction between friend and enemy. What's political has to have this distinction. If there is no distinction, we are not talking about the politics and the political. But never mind theory. Wherever we live, we wake up daily to see the precious political middle ground dramatically shrinking in both the new and old democracy, whether in Poland, Hungary, or in the United States. And what emerges as a most unsettling irony is that the anti-democratic mobilization we are now seeing everywhere and the undermining of the liberal democratic imaginary are being facilitated and legitimized by the very freedoms gained in this part of the world exactly 30 years ago. What I'm saying is that democracy feeds anti-democracy. I will say something more about it. Let me talk briefly about three contributing factors that I feel have set the stage for these processes of de-democratization. In my view, the primary one is a crisis of solidarity. I believe that Polish historian, former dissident and political prisoner, and brilliant critical thinker, late Karol Modzelewski, has provided us, anyway me, with a helpful pointer here. Looking back at French Revolution, he was a historian, he observed that all that's left today of its grand trinity, maxim, liberté, égalité, fraternité, is liberté. There is no doubt that in the process of transformation to liberal democracy, égalité and fraternité, the key principles of Solidarity's non-violent revolution, the Polish Solidarity non-violent revolution, accomplished exactly 200 years after the French Revolution, 1789, right, 1989, have vanished. Those principles had vanished. For Józef Tischner, who was a Catholic priest and progressive thinker, who lived in Krakow, solidarity meant to carry another's burden, maybe to carry each other's burden. That solidarity is gone. Social solidarity, a value of no particular importance to classical liberalism, but one that greatly broadened its meaning in Poland in the 1980s, has been hastily abandoned to give priority to economic freedom. Indeed, Hayek's The Road to Serfdom, concerned exclusively with the needs of an individual, became the Bible for economic reform in the region. It was clear that for Hayek, the marriage of solidarity and liberalism was illegitimate. And today, in the context of raging neoliberal capitalism, it is completely forgotten. To be sure, the swift implementation of radical economic reforms in the early 90s in Poland stopped a catastrophic economic collapse. Known as shock therapy, it privatized the inefficient state-run industries and freed up the markets. But that happened at the cost of squandering the treasures of social solidarity and the sense of community that people had so deeply experienced in the 1980s. My professor, the late Jerzy Szacki, a fabulously wise, not just distinguished professor of sociology, and my first mentor, commented already at that time in 1989 that Solidarity Revolution had transformed itself imperceptibly from a workers' revolution into a revolution of owners, or more accurately, owners to be. Looking back at the ultimate betrayal of the principles of social justice, do I have time? I still have like
5 minutes.
Jesus Christ. I know. Maybe I should just stop. Okay, let me just name the factors. So the first factor, I thought it was the disappearance of social solidarity. The second factor is cultural. But I wanted to say something that I didn't say. I needed to say that it all happened 10 years ago when a certain party in Poland, which was a civic platform by a liberal party, decided that, we are successful, we are great, we don't have to share it with anybody. And this is a party with the solidarity pedigree, did not have the foresight to consider easing the conditions of the poor, of the very poor, of the elderly, and also of recent graduates who, in the booming economy, found employment but worked on temporary fixed contracts known as trash contracts with no benefits or work security. The second, so this is the vanishing of solidarity. The second thing is the contributing factor is cultural. And let me just tell you what I mean by that. This is not necessarily true of all countries, but it's most certainly true in Poland, when liberalism, we never had a tradition of liberalism. Liberal democracy was a very recent arrival. And that liberal democracy began to lose to a competing, long-established and powerful imaginary. This is that of the nation and nationalism. And I'm not going to explain that cultural aspect of that, but believe me, it is very important. It's competing. It is people are rallying now when everything is going well. They are rallying around the question of the national pride, and I'm not going to go into it anymore. The message of that particular factor is liberal democracy is a conspiracy. There was a conspiracy around the round table. They betrayed us. We allowed those communists to survive. We didn't put them to prison, and they didn't rot in prison. And that was the primary sin. We have to deal with it now. The third and final contribution. So what I wanted to say is what is happening right now because of this cultural change. And I wonder whether you actually thought about it. Is that people are, of course, terribly afraid of losing everything that they have. But in such a context, that people are nervous. They turn to nationalist populist leaders who, brimming with confidence, say, "Give me the power, and I will take responsibility for your future." My question to you is, did you hear about authoritarian democracy? It only sounds like oxymoron. The third and the final contributing factor has to do with the uncanny era of post-factuality that we found ourselves living in, whether the lies are furnished by the winners in the hacking competitions organized in the university across Russia, or by the false statements by the government officials reproduced via state-controlled media on a myriad of media platforms. This is the soup we live in. We live, and I'm being very radical when I'm saying it, but I think we need to say it, in the midst of organized lie. The ideal subject of totalitarian rule, wrote Hannah Arendt in a remark that in the age of Trump sounds like a direct warning, is not the convinced Nazi or the convinced communist. That's not the ideal subject of totalitarian rule. But people for whom the distinction between fact and fiction and the distinction between true and false no longer exist. I was talk at the very end, and I won't, but I will mark it, about the crime committed against dialogue, the killing of dialogue, thus generating specific particular monological ecology that enables the process of de-democratization and unfreedom. So the question asked is, what is happening to that freedom now, the freedom we already achieved? And how come that it's crumbling in front of our eyes? I think that part of that ecology is guilty one, the crime of killing a possibility, the divisiveness. We have two sides, but they don't talk to each other in America. We have two sides, but they don't talk to each other in Poland. We have two sides, but they don't talk to each other in Hungary. Vitriolic, toxic divisions. Killing of dialogue between them contributed to the, in my opinion, contributed to the development of unfreedom. Liberal democracy has plenty of enemies, of course, and as Michnik recently put it bluntly, and in market terms, he said, there exists a demand not for freedom, but also for fascism. Are there any reasons for hope then? Yes. Though we need to go back and try to meet with others whom we lost halfway through our democratic transition. Nadim Gordimer, great South African writer, opened one of her essays on apartheid with the sentence, "Men are not born brothers, they have to discover each other." She's talking here about the solidarity we have lost, the central treasure of democracy that we need to rediscover. New actors. Where is the hope? I'm skipping a lot of here, but there is a new hope in new actors that appear on the stage. Those actors are women, and those actors are children, and those actors are disabled people, and we need to pay attention to that. They bring completely new content to the struggles for democracy. And citizens of Hong Kong, who are there to shield the rule of law from the rule of one-party state. And the citizens of Sudan, organizing night protests to pressure the generals to hand over power to civilians. There seems to be part of extraordinary resurgence of confidence also in local self-government. If you think about what happened in Istanbul, Istanbul is a different republic from the rest of Turkey, at least. So those are the new keepers of the flame. Their actions safeguard, but above all, further endow and expand the potential of the liberal democratic imaginary that can still guide our aspirations and hopes of this age. No, liberal democracy is not history yet. Thank you. We don't have to have questions. It's late. Let's go have some wine.
We cannot
okay, of course I'm here.
We cannot skip the question if someone asks a question.
I don't want to terrorize you, but I already did, right? Saying no questions. No. Go ahead. Go, Ellie has a question, yeah.
I have so many questions. Now I'll try to...
Oh, God.
No,
try, yeah.
I'll make all one and I'll stick to the last one. You mentioned something about hope and I was constantly thinking, whether what we are witnessing today in post-communist, post-socialist countries is sort of a backlash, but then we have US, which we don't know what kind of backlash is that. And then you bring hope, and then you said something that people have to find each other.
Yeah, and I had to skip the whole thing about it. So.
One, I would want to hear that more because I would say you mentioned women. I would say rather feminists because, as we know, women in Harvard or can be as patriarchal, I think.
Yeah, but not those who are marching in the black protests, who are going on black strikes.
Yeah.
You know, this is, I'm talking about the movement, which I don't know whether all those women call themselves feminists, but they probably are not ashamed of that anymore. They were perhaps reluctant feminists once, and they are not,
Yeah, in this way, I was thinking, when I said feminist, I was thinking for two things: transnational feminist radical movement, how to find each other, and how do we bring these normalities, these imageries that you mentioned, social imageries or normalities that when we think of what normal could be, because that's when the conflict happens, when our normalities conflict, what we consider normality. And also, I'm very curious about other types of, lately I was very curious about the Rojava women, and is it something that we can learn?
I didn't even mention Turkey here because it's such an extraordinary example, and so okay. Let me just be quick about that. I really believe that, and you know, I had to skip all those contributing factors, but I think what had happened is our fault, and I'm talking about academics and intellectuals and intelligentsia and all of of us who believe that democracy is great and liberal democracy with human rights, with this kind of solidarity element that I mentioned. It's going, and we are going to have it ever after. I think that we took it for granted, but that's not only that. We didn't talk to those people who did not particularly think that that's their social imaginary, or that they were marginalized, and therefore they never became part of that imaginary. And I'm thinking about people in the transition to democracy, but in a second I will talk about America, we lost them because we didn't invest. They were older people, and we didn't invest in them. And they were wonderfully embraced by the ultra-right parties, which they better understand. They better understand because they understand the pain, the suffering. They understand the price paid during the Second War. They understand those things, which are very much in the presented in the language in the form of nationalistic discourse. So I think that's our fault. And we ignored that. The ruling parties didn't pay attention to them either because, they were so ahead of the crowd and we are doing so well. I'm talking about Poland right now. The same situation is really somewhat in America. So just as different it is, and you said, yes, this is different, those are those young democracies, but what in America? And in America, we even thought, 2 years ago, I think, that no, our institutions are so strong. Nothing can happen. We'll just not vote for him anymore, or we had various Republican presidents, and that was all civil, very, very civil. Some were stupid, some were not necessarily. But at the same time, I think that we made the same mistake. We skipped. We were talking about it today at lunch, a lovely picnic lunch. There is this play, and since I'm a theater person, I kind of like to think about it. This is an American play, not very well known, but it was on Broadway once or twice, off-Broadway. And it's called The Flyover Country. And it's about Middle America. Yeah, there are this, and it's very difficult. I mean, it's not that New York and Los Angeles are two elites, because we have everybody, right? They are workers, it's an incredibly diverse thing, but people talk to each other, whereas in the middle of the country, that we fly over from LA to New York, right? And we just look from the planes down. There are people that we do not talk. There are people who have extremely harsh lives, and we don't talk to them. There are farmers who kind of reproduce the stuff that their parents and grandparents did, and they have less than that. And yet there is something there. And why the hell did they vote for him? Why did they vote for somebody who is trying to take away their social security? Why? Because there is something which is called human dignity. And perhaps it's more important than immediate interest. And I think that those things are similar here and there. Good. No question.
I think we leave with the...
Okay. Give him the thing.
We cannot leave. Okay, you know what? I think the most symptomatic moment of your speech was a certain utterance, a certain word, a certain enterprise, a certain business. That is Soma Book Station. As I take it, I think you weren't cynical about it.
No, I wasn't. Absolutely wasn't.
Okay, when you use Soma Book Station as a measuring stick for the prosperity of this country.
I understand.
On that note, I would like to ask you to do your research properly, do your homework properly, and show a bit more respect for the people here. Because are you aware of the stunning figures of unemployment in this country? And
I
are you
do.
aware
I am.
of the fact that extreme poverty is the norm in this country? And lastly, are you aware of the fact of how many people can afford to have a drink in Soma Book Station?
No, I think that your remark is a proper remark, and I should not say what I said in the incredible joy after arriving to this country at the time of peace and landing there, because I came late at night, and that place was open and it was beaming, and I think you're right to scrutinize me about it. At the same time, I do think that you guys have a chance.
Yeah.
We have. They have a chance. Seem to have a rather elitist conception of peace, actually.
Yes, yeah. You can go and
No. Look, this is this paradox of not seeing others, and I was talking about it while so Shkodër.
My only problem was that you used Soma Book Station as a measuring stick.
No, because it's the only place I've been to. Sorry, and I didn't do any research, and I'm here 10 hours, and I should not say it, but I had to say. It was an incredible moment for me when I realized that people are sitting and talking normally, and they are sitting on, and yes, it seemed like a very diverse crowd, probably privileged, and so we all are here as we are sitting. I'm afraid to think about it.
After party in Soma, it's not okay. Sorry for that.
No, that's okay. I'm taking it without a grain of salt. Yeah.
For the people who live in this place. This is special. Bring up Soma Book Station, which is a rather tiny group of people who have the privilege to go there and have a drink. I don't see why that's so much with your speech.
No, let him talk. No, that's not right.
Just some sense of order in the discussion. So if he made a question, we try.
No, and I think I'm with you, and I think that I shouldn't have said that. On the other hand, I want you, and I would like you to grant me some, a little bit of a leeway of somebody who just landed in Prishtina. And did not see anything. Forget about your forget about your research. But independently from that, I would like to talk with you about it separately. And I acknowledge that one should not take those things lightly.
Can I ask you something? What's the difference between Soma Book Station and every other bar in Prishtina?
Can we keep this?
I don't see why.
I think this is an amazing discussion that we cannot have now.
Can I just hand over the mic? Okay, so can you please make the question so that everyone can? Yeah.
No, I'm just wondering, like, if so it's Elzbieta just use that as an example of prosperous Prishtina, let's say that. Yeah. But I'm just wondering, what is the difference between Soma, if you're looking at it as a privileged, space, let's say in the city, then what is the difference that you see between any other space?
There is no other difference. Had she used any other bar,
I have not been to another bar. I would do that. And I like to go there again and to check it out.
Can we just have some
methodologically speaking, that was my problem. Had she mentioned any other bar in Prishtina, it would have been the same reaction from me. The point is that you cannot use
describe. So,
a certain gathering in whatever cafe that may be as a measuring stick for the prosperity of a country.
okay.
And okay, she was fair enough to say that it was just that she arrived and so on, but why should that personal experience penetrate your speech here, enter in your speech here? I find it rather irresponsible to deploy that kind of...
Fine, fine. I'm taking it. Go ahead. I'm taking it.
Okay, so I think it's noted, your position, and yeah, I think your position is noted, and it's there to be noted.
That's right, and it's valued.
Please continue discussions after over drinks. Thank you so much again for being here and for your presentation tonight.
Thank you
so much. Thank you.